There are moments in life when God removes every comfort, every resource, and every false support so we can finally discover the strength inside our spirit. This story is about a man who had nothing, not a dollar in his pocket, not a stable place to sleep, not even a plan for tomorrow. But what he gained was far greater than gold or silver. God was teaching him that wealth, true wealth, begins in the soul. Before God gives you something in your hands, He first builds something inside your heart. Before He fills your pockets, He strengthens your spirit. Before He releases abundance, He teaches you identity, humility, discipline, and faith. This is the journey of spiritual wealth, a wealth that no thief can steal, no economy can destroy, and no storm can erase. Today, I invite you to walk with Him through valleys of fear and mountains of revelation, through tears of confusion and breakthroughs of faith, through nights of emptiness and mornings filled with hope. Because this story is not only His story. This story belongs to every person who ever felt forgotten, every dreamer who started from zero, every believer who ever wondered, God, why am I here? Yet deep inside they knew God was preparing them for greatness. God was shaping them in secret. God was building a future far beyond what they could imagine. This is what happens when heaven enrolls you in the school of destiny. There was a time when he believed life was stable, safe, and predictable. He woke up every morning knowing where he was going and returned every evening to the comfort of routine. But stability can be fragile, and comfort can be deceptive. One ordinary morning, without warning, everything collapsed like a house built on sand facing a sudden storm. What he thought was permanent turned temporary, and what he assumed would always be there disappeared in a heartbeat. It was as if life decided to test the very foundation of his existence, removing every comfort one piece at a time until all that remained was uncertainty and silence. At first, he searched for explanations, trying to understand how everything slipped through his hands so fast. He asked himself if he made the wrong decisions, if he trusted the wrong people, or if he simply wasn't good enough. He replayed memories in his mind, looking for something he could have done differently, hoping to find a moment to undo, a mistake to correct, a door to reopen. But sometimes life doesn't fall apart because you failed. Sometimes life breaks so God can rebuild you with stronger materials, deeper wisdom, and unshakable faith. The loss wasn't an ending, it was an introduction to a deeper calling, even if he didn't see it yet. He stood in a moment where everything external was gone, leaving only his internal world exposed. The silence around him was heavy, and the weight of uncertainty pressed against his chest. Yet in that moment of emptiness, God was beginning a hidden work. God doesn't always speak with thunder. Sometimes He speaks by removing everything that distracts us from hearing His voice. When he thought he was losing control, heaven was gently showing him he never truly had control in the first place. And while his heart trembled with fear, God's hand was guiding him, even if that guidance felt like abandonment in the moment. So there he stood, empty pockets, trembling heart, confused mind, but with a soul about to be awakened. Many people see loss as punishment, but God sees loss as preparation. Many run to comfort, but God pulls His chosen ones toward growth. He didn't know it yet, but his breaking was the beginning of his blessing. His emptiness was the soil where God would plant purpose. His tears were watering seeds of destiny. Life didn't fall apart to destroy him. It fell apart to rebuild him with divine strength, supernatural resilience, and a future greater than anything he imagined. When life stripped him of everything familiar, the streets became his unexpected classroom. There were no warm lights, no encouraging voices, no soft mattress waiting for him. Only cold pavement, quiet nights, and the raw truth of existence. The world that once felt full suddenly felt distant, and the life he once lived felt like a dream he could barely remember. Yet in that uncomfortable silence, something sacred began. The darkness wasn't just darkness, it was a place of molding, shaping, and refining. There, in solitude, he discovered the classroom God uses when he wants to produce greatness: humility, endurance, patience, and faith. He learned lessons no book could teach and no mentor could explain. He learned that without pride, a man becomes teachable. Without comfort, a man becomes alert. Without noise, a man finally hears God. On those cold nights, he didn't just miss warmth. He missed certainty, dignity, and identity. But God was rebuilding all three in secret. God was teaching him that true strength is not found in muscles or achievements, but in surrender. True wisdom isn't learned through success, but through struggle. And true faith isn't built in victory, but in the trenches of life where everything seems lost. There were moments when hunger gnawed at him, when fatigue sat heavy in his bones, and when doubt whispered that he had been abandoned. But every struggle was reshaping him. Every hardship was chiseling away pride, fear, and dependence on the world. God was teaching him that a man who has nothing can become dangerous. Not dangerous to people, but dangerous to doubt, depression, and hopelessness. Because a person who has survived emptiness with faith becomes unstoppable when blessings finally come. He wasn't losing, he was learning. He wasn't broken, he was being rebuilt. Over time, he realized the value of invisible seasons. Not every blessing shines. Not every miracle feels pleasant. There are victories hidden inside valleys, and there are breakthroughs hidden inside breakdowns. What looked like abandonment was actually divine intimacy. What looked like failure was spiritual training. What looked like the end was the beginning of a new identity. The street was not his destination. It was his training ground. God was not punishing him. God was preparing him to hold blessings with humility, to walk with power without arrogance, and to rise with purpose bigger than himself. The greatest battles are never fought in the streets or in front of crowds. They are fought in silence, inside the mind, when no one sees the tears and no one hears the screams trapped behind forced smiles. He didn't just lose money, he lost certainty. He didn't just lose shelter, he lost the illusion of control. His biggest enemy wasn't hunger or cold pavement. It was the voice inside his head telling him he would never rise again. That little whisper of fear, doubt, and insecurity tried to convince him that his story ended in that season, that his destiny stopped where his comfort ended. But deep inside his spirit, another voice, quiet but powerful, refused to die. It reminded him that God never abandons his chosen ones. He refines them. There were nights when he battled thoughts that said, "You are forgotten," and mornings when shame tried to wrap itself around him like a heavy chain. Sometimes he felt like a failure. Other times he felt invisible, and often he wondered if anyone on earth would care if he disappeared. But the beauty of brokenness is that it exposes who we really are. When life stripped him of status, the only thing left was character. When life took his stability, the only thing left was faith. And faith became his anchor in the emotional storm. He realized that pain doesn't come to destroy. Pain comes to cleanse, strengthen, and purify the soul from pride and illusions.
In the middle of that internal war, he discovered a truth few learn early in life. The battle for destiny is first fought mentally before it manifests physically. No success begins externally. It begins in resilience, discipline, and spiritual stamina. He had to stand up mentally before he could rise financially. He had to win spiritually before he could win materially. The enemy hoped to break his mind so his future would never be born. But instead of folding, he pushed through, breath by breath, prayer by prayer, tear by tear. Sometimes victory doesn't look like triumph. Sometimes victory simply looks like refusing to quit. And there, in the darkness of struggle, he discovered a strength he never knew he had. Not loud strength, but quiet endurance. Not prideful strength, but humble perseverance. Every day he got up without certainty, but with faith, and that is power. Every day he moved without clarity, but with trust, and that is courage. He learned that the richest souls are not the ones who avoided battles. They are the ones who survived invisible wars without losing their heart. His spirit didn't collapse, it awakened. And once a soul awakens, destiny becomes unstoppable. Faith sounds beautiful when life is comfortable, when prayers are answered quickly, when dreams seem within reach. But real faith, the kind that heaven honors, is born when nothing makes sense, when prayers seem unanswered, and when the future looks empty and frightening. He stood in a season where resources were gone, opportunities were scarce, and logic said surrender. Yet something inside him whispered, "Keep trusting, keep believing. God is not done with you." Faith doesn't grow when everything works. Faith grows when everything breaks. Faith is not a song we sing in church. It is the fire we hold on to in the middle of darkness. Every morning he woke up, not because life was easy, but because faith whispered that tomorrow might look different. Every night he laid his head down, not because he had everything, but because he believed God was preparing something. Faith is not pretending everything is fine. Faith is knowing God is working even when everything looks silent, empty, and painful. Sometimes God doesn't provide immediately because He is strengthening the foundation first. God was not delaying him, God was developing him. The delays were not denials, they were divine construction. He learned that faith is choosing God even when you don't understand His plan. Faith is trusting the process even when the process hurts. Faith is walking even when the path is invisible, and standing even when knees feel weak. At times he felt frustrated, confused, and emotionally tired, yet his heart refused to let go of heaven. That is the level of faith that moves mountains, opens doors, and breaks cycles. That is the faith that produces miracles, not just around you, but inside you first. Because miracles begin in the heart long before they appear in life. And through every test, every silent night, every tear-filled prayer, faith was building muscles in his soul. He didn't see it yet, but there was a new man forming, stronger, wiser, deeper, and spiritually unbreakable. Faith didn't take away the struggle, faith carried him through it. Faith didn't erase the valley, faith taught him how to walk through it with dignity and hope. And when God tests your faith so deeply, it's because He plans to bless you so greatly. He would soon understand that storms don't sink a man God is training. They shape him into who he must become to carry the future waiting for him. There came a moment when he realized the world was no longer watching him. No applause, no recognition, no one checking in. People who once shook his hand now walked past him like he never existed. At first, this silence felt like punishment, like life had erased him and heaven had forgotten him. But over time, he discovered that invisibility is not rejection, it is protection. God hides His greatest soldiers before He launches them, because premature visibility can destroy what isn't fully formed. When God wants to grow a tree, He hides the seed in darkness and soil. He was not buried, he was planted. The absence of people forced him to seek the presence of God. The lack of validation pushed him to find value within himself instead of the approval of others. He learned to pray without waiting for someone to agree with him. He learned to move without applause, to stand without support, and to believe without confirmation. When no one sees you, God becomes your coach, your comfort, your strength, and your audience. The most powerful transformations happen away from human eyes, in the secret places where destiny is quietly shaped by divine hands. In that hidden season, he discovered patience, not the passive kind that waits quietly, but the warrior kind that refuses to give up while waiting. He learned discipline, waking up each day determined to grow, even when life looked stagnant. He learned consistency, showing up for his future even when the present was painful. Slowly, invisibility became a blessing, not a burden. He realized that public elevation requires private preparation. You cannot stand on a mountain you've never trained to climb. God wasn't silent. He was sculpting him, chiseling away fear, doubt, pride, ego, and insecurity, until only purpose remained. And when the world finally looks again, because one day it will, they won't see the broken man they ignored. They will see a warrior God rebuilt in silence. They won't see the struggle. They will see the strength. They won't understand how he rose because they never witnessed how he fought in the dark. That is why hidden seasons are holy. They are where God does his deepest work. And every chosen one must pass through invisibility before walking in destiny, because until you can stand alone with God, you will never stand strong before men.
As time passed, something miraculous happened inside him. Gratitude began to bloom in the most unlikely soil. Not gratitude for riches, not gratitude for success, but gratitude for breath, for life, for the simple ability to wake up and keep going. He no longer measured his blessings by what he had in his hands, but by what he had left in his heart. The world teaches us to thank God when life is full, but he learned to thank God even when life felt empty. True gratitude is not born in abundance, it is born in survival. It is the language of souls that have seen darkness and still choose light. He started thanking God for small things, a moment of peace, a smile from a stranger, a piece of bread, a safe night, a breath of air, another sunrise. Gratitude softened his heart and sharpened his vision. He began to understand that joy is not found in possessions, but in presence. The presence of God, the presence of purpose, the presence of hope. Some people have houses but no peace, cars but no happiness, money but no meaning. He had nothing material, yet he possessed something priceless, a spirit unwilling to surrender to bitterness or hopelessness. Gratitude shifted his atmosphere. What looked small became precious. What looked ordinary became miraculous. Gratitude took what little he had and multiplied it in his heart. When you thank God for what you have, even when it feels like nothing, heaven takes notice. God blesses those who praise him in the valley because anyone can praise him on the mountain. Gratitude opened his heart, cleared his vision, and invited miracles into spaces where despair once lived. A grateful soul attracts divine favor like a magnet attracts metal. And with every whispered "thank you," he grew stronger. Gratitude became his survival tool, his spiritual weapon, his emotional anchor. It protected him from envy, reminded him of God's faithfulness, and positioned him for elevation. Because God raises those who appreciate what they have before he gives more. Gratitude didn't change his situation immediately, but it changed him. And when God changes you, your life eventually follows. He didn't just survive hardship, he learned to worship in it. And that is the kind of heart God trusts with abundance. Not a grateful mouth, but a grateful soul. One morning, something subtle but powerful shifted. It wasn't a loud miracle, a sudden breakthrough, or a dramatic rescue. It was a quiet change inside his spirit. He woke up not with wealth in his pockets, but with strength in his soul.
not with answers, but with peace, not with opportunities yet, but with readiness. That is how restoration begins, not with applause, but with alignment. God does not rebuild your life on shaky ground. He rebuilds it on a heart that has learned trust, humility, and consistency. Before God gives increase, He restores identity. Before He opens doors, He strengthens the foundation. The opportunities did not fall from the sky. They came disguised as responsibility. A stranger offered him a small job. Someone trusted him with the task. A door cracked open, not wide enough to walk through effortlessly, but wide enough to prove His character. God rarely sends blessings wrapped in gold. He sends them wrapped in duty and faithfulness. Someone else would have seen those moments as too small, too insignificant, too humble, but He recognized them as divine seeds. So He embraced every assignment as if heaven was watching, because heaven was. With each small responsibility, strength returned. With each task completed, self-respect grew. With each day of effort, life began breathing again. It wasn't magic, it was faith in motion. It wasn't luck, it was endurance meeting opportunity. God does not give heavy crowns to weak shoulders. God trains His champions in silence, then elevates them in the right season. Every step forward felt sacred because He knew where he came from, and He was determined never to forget it. His character grew deeper than his needs. His humility grew larger than his dreams. He was no longer asking, "Why did I suffer?" He was now saying, "Thank you for making me ready." Then one day, life began to look different. Not perfect, but promising. Not finished, but flourishing. The same person who once begged for a chance now became someone trusted, someone dependable, someone chosen. Restoration is not one moment. It is a journey of courage wrapped in obedience. And God, who watched him cry, now watched him rise. Quietly, gracefully, purposefully. Not because life handed him comfort, but because God used struggle to sculpt a warrior, a servant, a king in the making. That was the beginning of divine restoration. Slow, steady, and unstoppable. As blessings slowly returned, he realized something profound. The greatest wealth he gained was not material, it was spiritual, emotional, and mental. Money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy peace. Success can earn applause, but it cannot create purpose. A house can shelter the body, but only faith can shelter the soul. He once believed wealth was something outside him, something he could lose when life changed. But now he understood. The richest man is not the one who has the most, but the one who is the most. And the person he had become could not be taken from him by loss, time, or circumstance. He now carried wisdom that no classroom could teach. He learned resilience because life taught him how to stand when everything tried to break him. He learned compassion because pain softened his heart and opened his eyes to others who struggle silently. He learned patience because waiting became a daily exercise in faith. He learned gratitude because scarcity sharpened his appreciation for blessings. This kind of wealth builds leaders, not followers, warriors, not worriers, servants of God, not slaves to circumstances. True wealth is internal victory before it becomes external success. With every lesson, his soul grew richer. He valued people over possessions, purpose over comfort, peace over recognition, and faith over fear. He no longer chased success to feel worthy. He walked with God and let success chase him. He no longer feared losing anything because he now carried the one treasure that can never be stolen, a soul strengthened by God. When God builds you in adversity, no blessing can destroy you, no weakness can return to you, no storm can shake you. Once a person becomes rich inside, no poverty outside can intimidate them again. And that realization changed everything. He walked with quiet confidence, not pride, but divine security. He smiled not because life was perfect, but because his spirit was anchored. He moved forward not by sight, but by faith. And the world could feel it, a presence shaped in suffering, forged in prayer, strengthened through silence, and crowned by grace. He was not the same man who once feared the future. He was transformed, refined, elevated in spirit long before elevation came in life. And now he understood a timeless truth. The wealth God builds in you is the foundation for every blessing God will later give to you. With time, God tested him, not with struggle, but with opportunity. Blessings began to appear, slow at first, then steady, then undeniable. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because God decided the preparation was complete. Heaven will never deliver abundance to a heart still fragile, selfish, or unbroken. God waits until humility is rooted, discipline is consistent, and identity is anchored. Only then does he trust a man with increase. The doors that once seemed locked now responded to prayers he once prayed in silence. But this time, he walked through them not as a desperate seeker, but as a prepared steward.
He received opportunities not to prove himself to others, but to honor what God invested in him. Work came not to inflate his pride, but to exercise his faithfulness. Influence came not to elevate his ego, but to serve others the way God once comforted him. Those who rush success often crumble when pressure rises, but those built by God carry success with grace. He did not brag, he thanked God. He did not compare, he focused on purpose. He did not chase platforms. God delivered platforms to him naturally, because his heart was finally aligned with heaven's rhythms. People who once ignored him now saw him, and some questioned where he came from. They didn't understand that greatness doesn't appear overnight. It grows in silence, watered by tears and kept alive by faith. He was not rising because he was lucky. He was rising because he endured. God does not elevate the talented. He elevates the trustworthy. The blessing was not just in what he received, but in who he became. He could handle success without becoming arrogant, wealth without becoming greedy, and honor without forgetting where he came from. And so, God entrusted him with more, not because he asked loudly, but because he obeyed quietly. Heaven doesn't reward noise. Heaven rewards obedience. He stepped into his season not with pride, but with reverence. He didn't say, "Look what I did." He said, "Look what God carried me through." For a man who has walked through emptiness, abundance is never a throne. It is an altar. And he wasn't just blessed. He was assigned, positioned, and called. When God trusts a man with abundance, it is because he knows that man will never worship the blessing. He will worship the one who gave it. Now he understood the mystery, the lesson he could never see when he was hurting. True wealth was never about money, status, success, or applause. True wealth is resilience. True wealth is peace after storms, joy after tears, purpose after confusion. True wealth is the ability to stand with nothing and still say, "God is good." He realized poverty was never the absence of money. Poverty was the absence of inner strength, identity, and faith. And wealth was never about accumulation. It was about transformation. God didn't raise him to show the world his bank account. God raised him to show the world his soul. A soul refined by trials, purified by humility, sharpened by struggle, and crowned with grace. He was no longer afraid of starting over,
because he now carried wealth the world could not touch. Fear no longer directed him. Doubt no longer held him. He walked with peace, with gratitude, with wisdom, with quiet confidence that only survivors carry. A rich soul cannot be defeated. A man who has learned to live with little cannot be shaken by abundance. He looked back at the valley that once terrified him and realized it was the birthplace of his strength. He remembered the silence that once felt heavy and realized it was the classroom of heaven. He remembered the tears that once burned and understood they were watering seeds of destiny. If you ever wonder why God allows seasons of emptiness, it's because He plans a future too big for weak foundations. God removes temporary things so He can build eternal things. He strips away illusions so He can reveal identity. He takes what is fragile so He can give what is forever. And now He walks not with pride, but with purpose, not chasing wealth, but carrying it. Because the truth stands forever. Before God puts wealth in your hands, He puts wealth in your soul. That is the secret of destiny. That is the gold that never fades. That is the treasure the world cannot steal. And when God finishes shaping a person in private, no force on earth can stop what He reveals in public. His story didn't end in loss. It began there. For this is the truth. Those who trust God in nothingness are chosen to steward greatness.